Welcome to Conversations with Laurel, everyone. Today I have, as always, a very special guest. Her name is Tara Heaton. Welcome, Tara.
Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me as your guest.
You're welcome. We are going to talk today about a little bit, just about your life and about a book that you have written called Life Minutes, Igniting Joy from the Fire of Heartache. It's a true story, right?
Yes.
Now, on the back of the cover, someone wrote, "It's raw and unapologetically real." I would say it is brutally honest. This book grabbed me, grabbed my heart, grabbed my soul, and didn't let me go until I got to the end, and it's still with me. So um, let me just say that the writing in this is spectacular and kept me turning pages. You claim that this is not a self-help book, but I would argue that there are so many takeaways that we all can take away from this book. All right. So tell our audience and our listeners what happened to inspire this book.
Well, it wasn't just one moment, I don't believe. Um, for many years, and I don't know if you want me to give a little context to my life,
Yes.
but for many years, people started to say to me, you should write a book. And they said that because of some trauma that I had been through and am going through. For example, and this is the premise of the book. Um, I was that mom truly living the American dream, like a rewarding career that was just growing, a loving husband, three healthy children, 14, 12, and 9. And my middle daughter, Caroline, got a virus that traveled to her brain and caused her to have encephalitis, which caused now what is over 20 years of brain damaging seizures. And so when this happened, I was like any mother would, the determined warrior to stop her seizures. And I promised her that I would stop these seizures. And through that journey, I learned so much. Our family has been through so much, and a lot of twists and turns, which I'm happy to get into, but I don't want to just have a monologue here. But to answer the question about writing the book, for years, people would say you ought to write a book when they would hear all that we have ventured through. And I never felt called to write the book until I realized how much I had learned. And then I thought, how dare I not share what has come from such heartache? And that's why I wrote the book.
Amazing. Again, your daughter's um, she went from being, I think, as you put in here, she was in gifted classes and and now, you know, her life has changed hugely. And you brought in so many different people. You tried so many different things. Is there still no prognosis for what they've called major neurocognitive
Yes.
disorder?
She has today, her primary diagnosis is major neurocognitive disorder, which simply means, quite honestly, a very low IQ. So over the years, we have watched her brain very slowly but consistently degenerate. So that is secondary to epilepsy. And the reason why her brain has been damaged by epilepsy, this certainly does not apply to most epileptics. As a matter of fact, about 95 of people who have epilepsy, their seizures are controlled with medication, some seizures, some device, other therapies. And then of those few, some of those seizures are damaging to the brain, and Caroline's seizures damage her hippocampus. And that is what is in charge of our ability to learn, to remember, and to manage our emotions.
And it was explain why it was non-operable.
Many times over, yes. Now, there are some surgeries, not dissection surgeries, but there are some surgeries that are available today, and we've considered them. And then we look at, it's always risk versus reward. What are we going to risk, and what do we have to potentially gain? And since I know you don't want to talk too much about epilepsy, we have yet to venture into one of those. None of them promise a seizure-free life or do they promise that she could come off of some of the terrible medication that goes along with seizure control. So without those two in her corner, right now it's not a gamble that we've decided as a family not to take. But I am always trying something new. And right now, actually, she's on a little patch called X39 that is supposed to regenerate your own stem cell activity. And kind of feel like it could be helping a little bit, but it's a long game. So I'm always fighting for Caroline.
Because you made a promise to her, right?
That's right.
That you would fight to keep her free from seizures, right?
That's right.
And in this book, what kept me turning pages, not quite frantically, but hopefully, and I'm just cheering for you. Talk about the treatments that you tried with her, because some of these are exquisite.
Well, we certainly tried everything traditional at first. I listened to the doctors and I tried medication after medication. I think at last count, she's tried 17 or 18 different epilepsy medications, and none of them have been effective. Some of the things that aren't in the book that I've tried since the ending of this chapter of my life, um, we've seen some success, and then her brain says, "Well, I'll show you." But we put her on some extreme diets, the ketogenic diet. We took her to Hawaii and put on her on a wheatgrass, clay, grain, and water diet.
Tell us a little more about that, because I was fascinated by this, and again, that helped, didn't it? But explain what that was, because I'm like, are you kidding me? And she went along with this. Explain that a little bit.
Oh, she's such a champion. Yes, she went along with it. My brother has lived mostly on wheatgrass, grain, and clay since he was 21. Um, well, no, he's been vegan since 21 and lived on mostly this diet for decades. And he's healed other people, even someone with pancreatic cancer, by inviting them to his home and putting them on this diet. And so while there's very little research out there about it, the doctors certainly had never heard of such a thing. I was at the point, Laurel, where we thought we have almost nothing to lose.
Yeah,
Caroline at
yeah.
this point was very addicted to benzodiazepines.
Ugh.
We just kept adding them and adding them and adding them. And she was a miserable, anxious, confused shell of a person.
Mm.
And interesting, when I write about this in the book, my editor was like, "You cannot put all this in here, Tara. It
Why?
is too
Because
harrowing. It's just too awful." So I pulled a lot of it out, quite honestly, of what we went through during that trip. Um, but I will tell you this, I will never regret it. It did get her off of drugs. It did show me that nature is here to heal us. And I'll also tell you this, if I ever get sick, I will go on that diet, no questions asked. I eat the clay. I eat the clay today, every day. And I
well,
don't know,
explain that. Tell us, like, what you would consume in a day, and how long she was on it, and
so
yeah,
she was on the diet about 40 days, maybe a little bit longer. So that
okay.
sounds, well, that's not very long. When you're doing that kind of work to be on this diet in a family of five with activities and communities and life to live, it was a huge lift. But that's not why we took her off of the diet. She was kind of a prisoner of our home, and because you couldn't go far without being on this diet. But she also was kind of zombie-like in a different way, like not depressed, not anxious, but she was living in this trance. And my brother was determined that it was because her brain was still working, taking all the energy to heal. And he said, if you start to give her food, Tara, she'll probably become a little bit more alert. And but not because she's starving. So first we introduced some organic nuts and greens, and that's all we added. And you would have thought we gave her brownie a la mode. So it's not like we were on the diet and then we just stopped it. We just very slowly transitioned into whole foods, raw foods, organic foods. And sadly, her seizures slowly returned.
Yeah, because they stopped while she was on this. And again, talk about extreme wheatgrass, wheat grains, this like clay mixture, right?
Yes, yes. And well water.
Oh, for 40 days.
Yes.
And she was always willing to try whatever you were willing to try with her. Uh, what we talked earlier before we set up this interview, and you mentioned something about if the impact of this disorder had been worse, um, it might have made Caroline's life easier. Would
Mhm.
you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. My now ex-husband and very good friend and I have had this conversation so many times. What was so heart-wrenching to witness was she she to this day knows what she's lost. If
Yeah.
seizures had made her more disabled, where she was unaware of what she had lost, I think that the suffering, the emotional suffering would have been less. Now, do I wish that on her? No. I took her to her little special needs monthly party just this past Saturday, and I realized in that room, she still was more advanced than many of the folks in that room. And we're grateful for everything that she can still understand and communicate. And she's very aware of what she's lost, what she'll never have. All she ever wanted from life was to be a second grade teacher and a mom. All she ever wanted, and she won't have those things. So today, yes, I'm still trying to stop her seizures, and I never will stop that. But the focus today is more on giving her the best life I possibly can right now. And that really is the big premise for the title of the book, Life Minutes. That, I was looking so far into the future, determined that if I could stop her seizures, it would put my whole family back together like a Hallmark movie. And I have learned that that is not the case.
Yeah, I'm going to read a little passage if you don't mind, just to give our listeners an idea of what you're dealing with, and I'm imagining still on a daily basis. People often ask me what brings on Caroline's seizures. Activity, heat, noise, stress, excitement, basically life. Getting off the couch and living life. That's what triggers Caroline's seizures. As stress or excitement increases, the chance for a seizure heightens. Are we talking every day now?
No,
Seizures? No,
no.
okay.
Right now, we'll go just recently. That's why I think it could be these patches. She went 15 days without a seizure. And then she had a few focal aware seizures, which in the epilepsy world, we used to call those auras, but they're called focal aware seizures, to where she just kind of has this fear and scare, but she doesn't lose consciousness. And the important piece there is um, she doesn't fall. Um, and she's had about 3 seizures, and now I think she's kind of back out of them. So we are probably late to the game in what we have planned to do. But in order to give her a little bit more independence, we're going to get her a helmet that she's agreed to wear when she's alone, because just recently she fell just going to the bathroom. And if she would have had that helmet on just to get to the bathroom and back, she wouldn't have a big knot on her head. And she's had more knots on her head than I've had bumps on the knee as a child
Yeah, yeah,
anymore.
yeah. You, the way you intersperse vignettes from your childhood, I think really enriches the narrative here. Tell us why you felt it was important for people to understand your background and maybe some of the things that you experienced growing up.
Well, initially, I didn't see that as being important at all. But then the more I wrote, the more I realized that if I'm going to make this a gift to the reader, it can't just be about a child with epilepsy and her mom. It has to be relatable to any reader, particularly women, but men have read it who have been writing to me of how much it meant to them. And I think the reason why, I don't think this, I know this, the reason why I put some stories that still are true to me today is because I do understand with the work that I do that the stories that we remember are guiding our behaviors today. We tend to, as adults, shame ourselves for air quotes, not getting over whatever we went through as a child. And I finally got a therapist. She calls it little T trauma. Like no one abused me, no one hit me, nothing even close to that. But our experiences absolutely manifest in the behaviors that we have today. And I think that's important. And if anyone can read some of those stories and think, wow, maybe that's why I fill in the blank, that is empowering stuff.
Yes, yes. And as I mentioned earlier, every person out there, can take something out of Life Minutes. Um, your two other children, Wilson, who's your older son, and
Yep.
Holly, your daughter, by the way, who came up with your Life Minutes title, right? We
Yes,
talk
yes.
about that. Do they understand the tremendous impact that Caroline's disorder has had on you? I mean, you talk about the impact on the entire family.
Mhm.
Did they understand the impact it's had on you? Did they ever talk about that?
Um, Very much so, and in very different ways. And I find this to be very interesting because my youngest Holly and my oldest Wilson are very much alike, but they respond to heartache differently. Holly is much more wants to explore it. Now, she was only 9 when this started happening.
Yeah, yeah,
She was very much more aware of how very slowly she went from being the baby of the family to the big sister, even to her brother, because he chose to never let mom see me anything but on high, happy, supportive, helpful. And so he found adrenaline and alcohol and anything dangerous as an ability to really dissociate himself. So he's much more focused on what I've been through than his sister used to be. But today, um, Holly's boyfriend has said this. My now husband has said this. He said, you all, the 5 of you, are bonded in such a way that, in a way, nobody will ever break into that. And it's sad for, for others, maybe, but it is absolutely true. We have unbelievably strong connection, the 5 of us, to include my ex-husband.
yeah, yeah. There's a team there. Um, Talk about feeling envious of others when this
I'm,
all happened. And
yeah,
again,
I'm
you
glad
know,
you
this is
asked
it's such a natural feeling to have, right? I mean,
that.
yeah.
Mhm.
Talk about
Well,
that and
I
how
want
you
to take
dealt
a
with
step
it.
back, and you
Yeah.
mentioned that this is brutally honest, this book.
Yeah. Yes.
And um, where I tried to be so honest was not in like telling trauma after trauma. This is not,
Right.
as I heard it said, the hardship Olympics.
Yeah, it's not a woe is me story. Not
No,
at
I just
all. No.
honest about what was going inside my head. Because oftentimes we don't allow ourselves to be honest with our truest feelings. And until we are not, we, they control us until we acknowledge them, then that gives us freedom. And so one of the things that most of us taught, especially in America, is to never feel envy. And especially in the Christian world, you can't covet. Well, damn, I wanted my daughter to be still healthy, sitting in 8th grade, listening to the history teacher, passing notes to her boyfriend like everybody else. And does that feel good to be envious of those children? No, but it was absolutely true. And I think that's one of the examples of how determined I was to be truthful with my thoughts.
How did you do it? I mean, how? What helped you? What helped you? I mean, you must still feel
Envy,
that. Yeah.
um,
I know I
not
would.
not like I used to, but sometimes I'll see one of Caroline's childhood friends with their 3 babies on social media,
Yeah.
knowing that that's what she always wanted. I mean, she didn't want to be a Hollywood star or an athlete. She just wanted to be a mom. And when I
Yeah.
see that, absolutely, if I sit and think about it for a minute, it hurts just as much. The difference is the way that I process that hurt is I allow it. Of course it hurts. I'm her mother and those are broken dreams, but it doesn't hurt every minute of every day. I've learned to use that hurt as fuel.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, another thing that we can, I think, all relate to is that when one person in the family hurts, we all hurt. We all feel some, we're all affected by it, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. Especially those empaths, us empaths in the world. Um,
Yeah.
as I think extraordinary as some of the things that go on in this story are, I do want to say that I read somewhere that there's only about four stories, and we all just are living them in different ways. And the emotions I experienced through this book, that's what I think is universal. We've all lived through heartache and disappointment and things just absolutely not going as planned. We've all lived through that. And that's what I hope is relatable.
Right. I was going to ask what do you want our listeners and readers of your book to take away from your experiences? I know that's kind of a huge question, but
It
and
is.
I think you've already addressed it in some case.
Well, let me tie it to the title
Yeah.
and a little caveat. Life minutes, I'll tell you what life minutes are not about. They're not about slowing down to smell the roses. They're not about taking that luxury vacation or eating the piece of cake at a birthday party. Life minutes, Laurel, are about celebrating with all your might every ordinary moment that you can, rather than doing what I used to do, which was to put joy on hold until I could cure everybody, make sure nobody was suffering, everything was, and then I had earned the right to have a little cake or joy. Life is now. That's what life minutes are about. So if the readers take anything from this, it is to stop denying yourself the gifts that are right here at your fingertips.
Yes. Acceptance. You talk about acceptance, overcoming guilt, because again, what parent wouldn't feel guilty
Mm.
about what's happening to their children? So you went from, and again, this started with Caroline with a virus, right? And
Yes.
then, it's kind of like, oh, viruses, you can't treat them, right? You could treat a
Yep.
bacterial infection, but you can't treat a virus. And then that goes to something else. And, who should someone have caught it? You talk about reconciling with her doctor, because again, there was some anger associated with that. Like what could have been done, what should have been done, right? So that was something that you talk a little bit about that. That
Well, early on, there's no doubt about how angry I was. And at first, I tried to blame the doctor. And then I realized that it was certainly not his fault, and that I was angry, but there was no one to blame. And so the anger really manifested inside me for a long time, Laurel, as an energy that I was living on. I
yeah.
was smoking cigarettes in secret, drinking a lot of sugar and caffeine, and not taking care of my health, and just living on this energy of, I'm going to beat this grief off of me and cure my kid. And I've learned that this journey of stopping seizures is a part of me. And I don't need to do it with the energy of anger anymore. People talk about healing and about resilience. What I really see this journey is a journey of growth. Because to me, healing is like putting yourself back to how you used to be. I'll never be the woman I used to be.
Yeah.
But and resilience is just kind of like weathering a storm, just like standing tall as you get through it. You know, I'm still in the storm. I'm
Yeah.
still fighting epilepsy and the effects that it's had on my family. Therefore, I have to choose to grow from it.
And Tara, you talked about uh, not shaming yourself, right? And finding and the need to find joy,
Yeah.
which I think you've already expressed beautifully. Um, so another thing that you deal with, and we all deal with at some point when something not great happens in our lives, the way people respond to you, and you talk about the clutch and tilt
Yes.
sympathy. So talk a little bit about that.
So, actually, my dear friend Kathleen, who was a big character in the book,
Yeah, I was going to ask
she
you about
was
her
the
too.
one.
Yep.
pointed it out to me. And she didn't use those words though. She gave it the name of a person in our community. And she's like, every time you see her, does she kind of like grab your arm and tilt her head in sympathy? And I was like, oh shit, yes, not only her, but everyone does that to me, Kathleen. Um, and I think it just felt like sympathy, so I didn't like it. Um,
Okay.
but they're just trying to care. And they didn't know what to say and didn't know what to do. And so today people still do that to me, but I don't respond
Yeah.
to it in the same way. It's not that I wanted them to do something different. I needed to learn to respond to it differently. Now, some people would like not want to get the sadness on them. Like you could feel it just like, "Ah, I don't want to be near that." And that's okay. Because the more truthful I've become in life and the more open about my story, what I've learned is some people are going to shy away from me.
Yeah.
And in return, I have the most beautiful, deep friendships that I've ever had in this lifetime.
I was going to ask, how would you want people to respond when they learn what you're going through?
Yeah.
And I think Kathleen is the perfect example of how you would want people to respond. Talk about Kathleen because I love her. I've never met her. I don't know her, but I already love her.
Everyone says, I want her to be my friend. And
Yeah.
I always say, no, no, there's plenty of Kathleen to go around. She just has this ability to find humor in the darkest of times and in the right way. Like she just does it over and over and over again. And she's still doing it. But everybody in our life can't be the Kathleen that you could tell anything to. I mean, we laugh at things that if anybody heard, they would think we were, I mean, all kind of terrible labels. As we know each other, we know how much we're kidding. Like we're both so devoted to social justice, but some of our jokes are just But to answer your question, here's what I attempt to do with people. Here's what I do with folks who I know are going through something difficult. I simply ask them, would you like to talk about it or do you need a distraction? And people seem to appreciate that because sometimes I just need my friends to be a distraction. And
Yeah.
people feel like if I'm going to be a good friend to Tara, I'm always going to ask about Caroline. And then they're going to have to set themselves up to hear about maybe suffering. And that's just only one part of being a friend. Sometimes it's about taking us away from our heartache. And so I just say, ask people if they're a true friend, how can I be a friend to you? Do you want to sit down and talk about what you're going through? Or can I be a distraction? And when I ask that to people, I would say half the time they're like, please distract me. Tell me anything.
Yeah. Yeah. When they ask about Caroline, do they also ask about Wilson and Holly?
Yes. Now the reason why I hesitated is there was a time when people wouldn't ask about Wilson because they knew what he was going through and his addiction. And so it was as if they were pretending that he wasn't one of my children. And I'll tell you, that pissed me off.
Yeah. I understand that.
But
Yeah.
here is what but I really, initially it did, but I understand that people are only using the tools with which they have developed. So
Yeah.
I don't take it personally. My close friends always ask me about Caroline. And what I've just started to do just recently is say, I love you for asking. Please never stop asking. But today, I don't want to get into talking about Caroline.
Yeah.
And that feels freeing. I may have just had a whole morning of being at the doctor, and her ability to communicate is so challenged that I find myself repeating and trying to explain over and over again. And I try to talk her out of her disappointment. And so maybe then a friend calls. I
Mm.
don't want to go through all that again. Do you
Yeah.
understand?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I found
Yeah.
myself saying to my friends, please don't stop asking, but today's just not that day. I don't want to get into Caroline.
So you just have to be honest.
Mhm.
I have to tell you, when you talked about trying neurofeedback in here, I was so hopeful. Our youngest son has Tourette syndrome, and again diagnosed when he was 8.
Mhm.
And uh, when he was a little bit older, we found a doctor who did neurofeedback with him, and it was tremendously helpful. Yeah.
Wow.
It's so again, different things, different brains, different treatments, and he still
Yeah,
he still has it, but he has found ways
Uh,
to manage in a way.
Well, that's one thing in the book I kind of wish I would have elaborated on a little bit, and I didn't because I didn't want people to feel like they were reading a book about epilepsy at all. That was not the point. I'm not a specialist, but at some point I say what a load of crap that was. And
Yeah.
it really isn't. It really isn't. That was just my energy in the moment. Like
Yeah,
it's
it didn't work. It didn't work for
yeah,
Caroline for her
but it
situation.
worked for many people. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Um, having a support system, having Caroline, having your former husband still part of your team. Talk about the dynamics, how they've changed.
Um, Billy, my ex-husband, is probably my second best friend. Kathleen is in first place. And Billy is next. And he's also one of my husband's best friends.
Oh, yay.
So is his husband. So you have to read the book to get into the details of that.
Yeah, yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah, you can truly, deeply love someone and be connected with them without being romantically in love with them.
Yeah,
And if anyone is curious, I fell out of love with Billy romantically long before we ventured into the realization that he's gay. I hope that's okay to talk about on
yeah.
here.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you have had one heck of a life, woman.
Yeah. So, watching him embrace his truth courageously is what a beautiful thing to witness. And it has been hard for him. He grew up in that very Southern, very Bible, very, being gay is an affliction and a sin and all that
Yeah,
kind of mentality. So it has not been easy for him. Or most people who are gay or queer that, they were raised to think that something's wrong.
right. To be
I
ashamed of
think
it. Yeah,
it's beautiful. I mean, yeah, I truly do.
yeah. We're not mistakes. None of us. None of us is a mistake. We are who we are. Um, Tara, you did a TED Talk in 2024, which I'm going to have a link to below. And again, it's very inspirational. Um, and I was going to ask you if you're still searching for a cure or whatever. And you still are. So this new patch, I think you said it was. Um, are any doctors giving you any kind of hopefulness for what's being evolving in this treatment?
So I didn't get the patch from a doctor. And I have not even been back to the neurologist since Caroline started on these patches. She's just finishing 2 months of this patch.
Okay.
And the reason why I think it's helping her slowly is because when she hits her moment of seizures, she usually has 8 to 12. And the last little patch of seizures was 3. And it's spring, and usually spring and summer elevates her seizures because her body is trying to transition to the heat. Heat is very hard on her. So I think something's going on there positive. I really do. And so um, if I asked the permission of the doctors, I think that they would answer like they always do according to protocol. We
Yeah.
can't suggest that. We don't have any data to support that. The last thing I wanted to do, they said we can't support that, and I said that's fine. I'm going to do it anyway, and I won't go into that story, but it was not very successful. But I simply will not stand by and accept that there's not an answer for Caroline. I just don't let it torture me the way that I used to. I just, if these seizures were not continuing to damage her brain, perhaps, but I've also seen young people with epilepsy and adults just nod their head to the neurologist, take more drugs, more drugs, more drugs.
Mm.
And many of those young people are sitting in a diaper on a couch today. And Caroline's life is certainly fuller than that. It is no criticism. Every mother, every caregiver has to navigate this journey in their own way. And you talked about jealousy. I see other women with so much more patience than I have, so much more of a nurturing gene. And I used to envy that. And then I realized invite these women into your circle, let them be that for your daughter. and you continue to be her warrior. And so I'm the mom that celebrates and has fun and does fun things. And I'm the mom that keeps fighting. I just have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Are there any studies that are going on? Have you researched that? I'm sure you've researched everything. I was just wondering if there are any kind of, yeah, test groups or
There
studies.
are some, but some of these studies are new medications, and they
Uh,
usually come with placebo. And
yeah.
you know, that would that I'm just I hate to say that if Caroline is in a much worse place, like bedridden or even wheelchair bound, I would consider that. It's just too dangerous right now. I mean, the
Yeah.
little bit of life that she lives, on a good week, she has a little job that she goes to 3 hours a day, 2 days a week. That has been unbelievably huge for her confidence. I'm not doing anything to risk that, for example. So,
Caroline, um, uh, Tara Heaton, you have done and keep doing remarkable work. Your book, Life Minutes, is incredible. Do you have any final words or advice for parents with children with special needs? You've
um,
already you've already said so much. I mean,
well, yes, I do actually. And it's this, and I wish I would have said this sooner, but I'm going to say it now.
yes.
I don't have it all figured out. I don't. And some days I do really well and I feel good about what I've done, the mom I've been, the professional, the sister, the wife, and some days I don't. But my advice is to keep learning and to keep growing and to forgive yourself for not hitting the mark. This is hard. It is hard. And not only have I allowed myself to accept the pain of what happened to my daughter, I'll tell you what I'm working on now, and which is why I have a therapist, is to accept my own disappointment for where I thought I'd be as a mother at this stage in life, the freedom that I'll never have. It feels selfish to say, but I know it is true that I grieve that too. And so keep growing. That's my advice.
Are you confessing that you're a human?
Absolutely right.
I think you are. Tara Heaton, Life Minutes, Igniting Joy from the Fire of Heartache, a true story. This will this will rock your world. This will make you reevaluate your own life and how you respond to the challenges that you have, because everybody out there, I know, we all have challenges in our lives. And this has been so helpful to me. I think everyone should read this. I really do. Tara, where do you want people to follow you?
Oh, the easiest place to connect with me, but just because this is memorable, is to go to Instagram and it's just at Tara Heaton Author. That's the easiest place. I have a website which is On Point Global. It's spelled French, ENPOINTE global.com. The book can be bought from the publisher, Two Sisters Writing, or on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and anywhere books are sold.
Okay. Um, this has been a fabulous meeting. I hope you all take away and get this book. Absolutely. Order it today. If there are any conversations out there, if any of you would like to have a conversation with me, let me know. I'll have my email below. I will have links to all of Tara's work below, including your TED Talk, which is phenomenal. Um, Tara, thank you. I know that you're going to keep fighting for your family, all of them, and for yourself. And I wish you the greatest success. And I have a feeling you're gonna find an answer.
Oh, Laurel, your reaction to reading this book is what I dreamed of, and it is helping me to make the suffering matter. So big thank you to you.
Well, again, thank you, and let's stay in touch, okay?
Absolutely.
All righty. You take care. Bye.